So with the second season, the gears shift and the show begins adapting Gokaiger, Super Sentai's 35th anniversary season. That was a pretty damn big anniversary for them. Even people who know nothing about Power Rangers outside of the original were reposting videos of the Legendary War, as it was called, that featured the 34 previous Sentai teams in a massive brawl against Gokaiger's foot soldiers. It was a big deal and a big season, with frequent callbacks to these older teams, and it was super convenient and useful for Power Rangers' 20th anniversary. Except here's where we get to the real problems. The first season of Megaforce is not good. However, like Samurai, it's a lot better on a second watch through and binging it, since you start to see some coherent character development and direction for the show. It's really basic, yes, but not unbearably so. There's bad acting and really overly simplistic themes and ideas, with an over-reliance on Sentai footage for some episodes near the end, mostly just being fight after fight without much in the way of plot. And then there's Gosei handing out powers like he thought there was a surplus. None of these things are good things, but they're not enough to doom the season or anything, just that it was pretty mediocre overall, especially since this was supposed to be the anniversary season. Well, season 2 is where we hit the wall. Hard. Why did they adapt Gokaiger, knowing full well that Gokaiger was there and waiting? Well, I've never been able to get exact confirmation of this. The contract with Toei expressly forbid them from skipping a Sentai season. They had to adapt Gokaiger if they wanted Gokaiger. And as I explained in the last part, there were ways of handling this that would make sense, mostly involving dropping the Gokaiger powers altogether at the finale and force the Rangers to get new ones. It's not a great solution, but it could work. Hell, Mighty Morphin shoved in 3 different Sentai for its initial seasons and made it feel like a continuous story. Well, see, there's a problem there. When I say they adapted 3 different Sentai, what I mean is that they had at least 40 episodes each season to cover everything, and they ditched the Sentai Ranger footage so that it was just pretty much the Zords. Aside from the occasional Sentai monster shots where they were all alone, or the Alien Ranger stuff, everything else was original footage. But now, the idea seems to be that they have to burn through as much Sentai footage as possible, whether it makes sense in the context of the show or not. And in fact, they seem to go out of their way to have it make less sense. As I said at the beginning, no more punches are being pulled. They could have planned this, they could have prepared for it, but instead, this feels like some of the most thrown together nonsense ever. First of all, we start with Season 2, Super Megaforce, with the episode Super Megaforce. Again, following the bizarre pattern from Samurai by adding Super to the season name and just having the season opener be named it. It at least makes more sense here since the powers really are different, except the names chosen sound farcical. Super Mega Force. Why even stop there? Maxi Extreme Ultra Super Duper Mega Cyber Radical Supreme Legendary Top Secret Force while we're at it. After the recap of the season finale, we meet our new villains, led by Prince Vakar, Vrock's brother.
Argus, Levira, our invasion went well. The humans barely put up a fight.
For the record, the invasion is not over. In fact, as we see, it has barely begun. No areas are controlled by the Armada, the Rangers are not captured or killed, and they already feel the need to send in a second wave of troops. Oh, and don't get used to the demeanor of Prince Vakar as triumphant or the like. To really not help with this bold new direction, Vakar's attitude changes almost immediately after the first episode, so that he's a whiny, petulant, self-obsessed, overly pampered moron who feels like he's going to yell and scream if 20 servants haven't polished his shoulders in the correct manner. The theme song has changed its visuals, highlighting the nature of the show, including the ending shots of Power Rangers helmets from the last 20 years, as well as the new powers, but we'll talk about those shortly. We're introduced to the new foot soldiers, X-Borgs. They are a marked improvement over the Loogies, with big robot helmets and robot noises that remind me of the Grinders from RPM. There are other soldiers with them of higher classes, the blue guys, I think they're called Bruisers. Similar to how SPD had higher ranking foot soldiers, but for the most part, it's the grayish purple guys with guns and huge numbers. And as you can see, this is a pretty sizable invasion, probably on par with Countdown to Destruction in the sheer number of ships and troops unleashed. Buildings are getting destroyed, and already we see the school has been abandoned in a rush and heavily damaged as X-Borgs sweep through it, contested only by a few of the Rangers. Noah recruits a few of the remaining students to find more survivors.
We've all got to look out for each other now. Stay strong. You guys can do this.
The Rangers make it back to the command center, a little worse for wear.
The world has never seen an invasion like this.
Yes it has. This is already a bad sign for your anniversary season when it can't remember one of its most beloved and remembered episodes, the one that ended up killing Gosei's purported mentor. The others can't believe the War Star aliens were only the beginning, which makes me kind of question just what exactly the relationship between the two forces was. Did the War Star aliens serve the Armada? Were they a specific wing? Why was Vrock with them if he was a prince as well? For that matter, considering his royal status, if the insectoids were just a wing of the Armada's military, why wasn't Vrock in charge? I suppose they could have just been the scouting force, but then why were they constantly talking about conquering the Earth themselves despite heavy resistance? Troy also arrives, having failed to locate Robonite. The Armada has cut off their communications as it is, meaning things are grim.
It is finally time for you to tap into the infinite power that lines the walls of this command center.
He hands them new morphers.
And your new Ranger keys, you will be able to unlock your Super Megaforce mode.
Yeah, it's a mode change instead of new powers altogether. It honestly feels like it was just a way to pad out the episodes even longer by adding additional morphing sequences in, since most of the time they have to start in Megaforce mode before going to the next level. Except for the rare occasion where, in fact, they can just morph right into super mode. Yeah. Speaking of modes, he explains that the Ranger keys along the wall are actually another mode altogether, Legendary Mode, where they can assume the forms of all the Rangers that preceded them. Gosei says a limit to this power is that it's difficult to sustain those forms for very long, though it really never factors into the plot in any significant manner.
Am I the only one who notices that my key is the wrong color?
Jake, there's a simple explanation for that.
But we'll never hear it. Here, I'll give it to you. Gokaiger used green instead of black. There. That being said, it is a funny line. At least it was when this first premiered. Now, in retrospect, it's become like Vrock's far too complex for you to understand, meaning they have no explanation for anything. For example, why are these keys here? Where did these powers come from? Why didn't Gosei just give them this ability right from the start if they're better? And bear in mind, it's the Legendary Mode that can only be used for a limited time, not the Super Mode. We're given no indication that these are newly developed or anything. Hell, that can't be it since the Ranger keys have been here since the first episode. If the Morphers weren't ready, what the hell were they doing there anyway? And why didn't Gosei ever mention these things?
There's a simple explanation for that.
Oh, okay. Ugh. Anyway, the Armada's attacks hit close to the command center, so the Rangers are dispatched with their new weapons. One complaint people do have for the show that I have to roll my eyes at is the fact that the super mode suits are pirate-themed, but that fact is never acknowledged within the show. Well, why the hell should it be? The Rangers are not pirates, the theme of the season is not related around piracy, it's just their weapons and suits have a vaguely pirate-esque design to them. But having oddities like that in Power Rangers is nothing new. This is a show that could have a ninja theme to it, and then have a samurai ranger who wields an ancient ninja electric guitar. And no, I will not get over that! Sentai stuff ends up in Power Rangers all the time for seemingly no reason. Or were people really that upset that Zane's morpher back during In Space said Mega when he morphed? So while it might make for a few cute tongue-in-cheek jokes to reference the fact that they're based on a pirate-themed Sentai, there's no need to do so within the show. Power Rangers has to stand or fall on its own merits. Which is why the stuff that happens during this season is so frustrating. I like the suits, they're fine, although if there's one problem with this being adapted from the pirate-themed Sentai, it's that there isn't anything about these suits that makes them look superior to the Megaforce suits. In fact, it kinda feels like it should be the other way around. The pirate suits look a lot simpler than the more ornate Megaforce suits. It's not aided by the fact that by virtue of Gokaiger's pirate theme, the fighting style is entirely different. The Rangers will frequently switch up weapons, some dual-wielding blasters or cutlasses against multiple opponents instead of firing guns in a line or just using their own unique weapons against foot soldiers or the like. In fact, they tend to use their weapons more often than when they just had their regular powers. While one could argue that the fighting style means they have more power, it actually gives the impression that they have to work harder to gain the results that they used to with the regular Megaforce powers. Anyway, after defeating a good chunk of X-Borgs, they decide to go to the next level.
Go Samurai! Power Rangers Samurai!
I do love that they use the morphing calls when they transform, although they only do it when they morph as a group, which means that for some teams who only get represented in an individual's morph, we don't get their morphing call in the series at all. Speaking of, some people were upset that the first legendary morph wasn't to Mighty Morphin, but honestly, I understand why they did Samurai. Remember, as I said earlier, a lot of younger kids were confused by them no longer being Samurai, and since the new audience was what actually put Power Rangers back on the map, appealing to the Samurai crowd actually makes a lot of sense, especially with the first cameos of the season. We'll get to that soon. Although I love how they only stay in Samurai for less than 20 seconds before they switch it up to Mystic Force. After a monster reverts them back to Super Mode, Troy confirming that while Legendary Mode is hard to maintain, the Super Mode is just fine to stay in, they use their swords and new Final Strike to defeat it.
Now that's a super mega win!
And now your attempt at creating Mythos just sounds forced as hell. And since we're trying to go through another 40 episodes of Sentai footage as quickly as possible, the Armada unleashes more X-Borgs and another monster. SPD and Ninja Storm are the next called upon until they discover that they can all morph into a Red Ranger. In the original Sentai, Overdrive was not in this team-up, but rather the red Gokaiger suit. So of course for this they edited it out, since it would have made no sense for them to morph back into the less powerful form. Now, this is the first edit they make in the season to correct something like that, and it won't be the last. And it's pretty seamless, so the skill is there to correct these things. However, there is a problem that we'll see later, probably one of the biggest issues of this season. Anyway, they destroy the second monster, but with 5 minutes left of the episode, they decide to introduce the new Megazord in too. Lavira, the weapons maker for the Armada, uses her Nintendo light gun, or Maximizer, to shoot beams at the monster to make him grow.
We no longer need Zombats, and we can enlarge more than one monster at a time.
Not that they'll ever use that ability in any meaningful capacity, of course. Gosei unveils their new primary craft, the Skyship, that unleashes their individual Zords and eventually forms up into the Megazord. And of course, like before, the Megazords just start to blur together, even though this one's final attack is a huge-ass cannon that comes out of their chest and shoots the enemy.
Super Mega Rangers, that's a super mega win!
Super Mega, shut up! Afterwards, they return to the school, which has already been rebuilt thanks to the efforts of the two friggin' savants that Noah put in charge. The reset button has been pressed, almost like that huge invasion didn't happen at all. I guess that's what happened between Countdown to Destruction and Quasar Quest. One weekend is all you need to clean up an alien invasion and move on with life. If even that long.
Now all we need is a teacher. Where's Mr. Burley?
Yeah. Let me take care of that.
Is there really only one teacher in this entire school? Criminy, not even Angel Grove High had it that bad. Noah finds our superfluous character.
How can I ever repay you?
You can get out there and start teaching again.
Was that ever called into question? Did we miss an episode? Actually, this does feel like 2 episodes crammed together and really poorly paced. They even clap for him as if his return is some major thing, even though we have no sense of how long it's been since the invasion began. It feels like it's still the same day.
Around this time last year,
A year has passed since the show began? Sure could have fooled me. There was nothing to indicate a summer break. And hell, with how time probably works in Power Rangers, this could have been the equivalent of 3 years of our time for all we know.
but if humans work together, they can achieve anything. You all prove that to be true.
Based on what exactly? At least in Countdown to Destruction, we saw ordinary humans stand up and take the fight to the invaders. Here, they've done nothing but cower in the face of it, while the Power Rangers did all the heavy lifting.
It's very clear that when faced with great adversity, the human spirit will always prevail.
That's this season in a nutshell. Empty platitudes about how awesome we are, how we'll always win, never give up, never surrender, never say die, believe it, by Grep Thor's hammer you shall be avenged, blah 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 blah. Saying it does not make it true. We need something to back that up. Ships came, blew up some stuff, landed hundreds if not thousands of troops, and apparently they all went home the next day after the Rangers destroyed a few of them. And this only gets worse, my friends. Troy skipped school to stand on some rocks and wonder where Robo Knight is, and enjoy this and the second episode of the season as the only times they wonder that before he does return. Now, to be fair, the second episode does show that the damage from the attack has not been entirely cleaned up yet. The opening shots are of city towns still smoldering and construction crews hard at work rebuilding things. The mall was apparently a priority, though. However, we also see our new opening 15-second explanation of the series.
To battle this new threat, the Power Rangers must master the abilities of the legendary Rangers.
And by master, they mean summon them and use them without any difficulty or mastering needed.
The first attack wave was fantastic. What destruction!
Yeah, so fantastic, everything is almost back to normal. Anyway, Gosei has prepared a database on all the past Ranger teams. Noah, who in the last season was worried about the exposure of their secret identities on the school campus, is accessing this database in the school computer lab with the monitor facing out towards the door. Nothing could go wrong here.
Noah, did you find the battery charger?
No, Mr. Riley, I'm sorry.
That's why Noah's the smart one of the team. Ah, well, at least he never does that again this season.
Jungle Fury, Wildfire, Samurai? There's so much to learn.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great to have episodes dedicated to each different team? Maybe with some returning guest stars to explain their season overall, educate the kids to show why these teams have significance and who they are for those who haven't watched them? Yeah, pity we don't get that. They explain maybe 1 or 2 teams during the entire season. Otherwise, their significance is assumed only in that they are there and because they call them legendary. Noah meets up with the others.
Gosei said that with each legendary ranger comes legendary zords we could use.
1. No, that's not the case at all. They're able to access all the team keys already, including SPD, which does give them a new Zord later. 2. Not all the teams give Zords to them. 3. Again, why was this not an option when the series began? But yeah, our grand villain for this anniversary season also begins his descent into mediocrity.
Whose brilliant idea was that?
Yours, boss.
Only listen to me if it's a good idea, which all my ideas are.
It is a funny line, but again, 20th anniversary, and this is supposed to be the largest threat the Rangers have ever faced. So I'd expect just a teensy bit more grandeur than this. Oh, and the Super Megaforce morphers. They're cell phones with a keyhole that open up. That's it. It's kind of neat with the opening up bit, but it's still just a flip phone. I like the tiki heads more. And, oh dear, it's time. I've been dreading this moment.
Rangers, you've now unlocked new modes that have never been seen before on this planet.
How? How did they unlock them, Gosei? They used RPM's weapons in a fight. That's it. Is it because RPM is from another dimension? Actually, that would be some kind of explanation. Instead, it's...
There's a simple explanation for that.
Yeah, new season, but still the same Gosei handing stuff out for no reason. But oh yes, modes never before seen on Earth.
Let's switch things up! Legendary Ranger mode!
Bring on the new powers!
These are the suits from Die Ranger, which was adapted into Mighty Morphin Season 2. Albeit, ironically, the full name is Gosei Sentai Die Ranger, no relation, of course. But yeah, aside from the White Ranger, these suits have never been seen in Power Rangers before. And while admittedly, we still technically adapted that season, this is the first of the Sentai-only teams in this season. The appearance of these Sentai-only teams in a season celebrating the 20th anniversary of Power Rangers. This naturally upsets fans, primarily because, and say it with me now, they are not Power Rangers! And thus we return to our theme of this show, the bizarre form of laziness, because the only reason to include Sentai-only Rangers is because of sheer laziness. They didn't want to film new sequences, edit out Sentai-only teams, or find footage of Power Rangers teams that would fit in just fine. Except, of course, sometimes they do! There will be a multi-Ranger morph where one of them morphs into one that was originally a Sentai-only Ranger and edit out that single one, but other times, nope, it's okay. There is no consistency about it. In fact, they even give some of these teams names like Prism Rangers or Squadron or Dragon Rangers or some crap like that, assuming they even remember that because at 1 or 2 points, they actually change the names they give them. The only other possible reason for their inclusion, as I said during Wild Force, was that apparently, again, secondhand information, and I've heard rumors that actually it's not true, producer Jonathan Zacher is a fanboy of Sentai and didn't want them removed, which is an even worse explanation for their inclusion. But here's the most damning thing of all about this. I wouldn't even mind them using the Sentai footage like this if they actually did something with it. This is an opportunity here, a glorious opportunity that allows them to save money by not having to edit out the Sentai teams while also expanding the mythology. We know that there have been other Power Ranger teams before Mighty Morphin, and we know there are Alien Rangers and other dimensions with it. You have Sentai-only teams in this, ones that no Power Rangers fan has ever seen before? Well, do some world building! Give us a story behind these teams. Have a previously unknown Ranger meet our heroes and tell the story of a lost team of Power Rangers that nobody knows about. Have them say that, I don't know, their exploits were lost to history because of some great mind wipe or catastrophe. So ultimately their battle was useless and that made them bitter and not want anyone to be Rangers anymore. Or tell the same story to try to inspire the team, that even in spite of no one remembering them, it was still the right thing to do. Sure, the footage of an unused pre-Mighty Morphin season isn't gonna look as good in HD, but there are ways around that. You can make it an in-story explanation, like the aspect ratio is wrong because these are computer monitors that have borders all around the footage the whole time, or the recording equipment of the era was different, or you could put a haze around it like it's from a dream. Hell, tell us about the first Power Rangers. Give us an origin for the morphing grid. In fact, I don't even think the morphing grid is mentioned at all at any point in either season of Megaforce. How do you do that? Even RPM, the series that takes place in a completely separate universe, managed to fit in their own version of the morphing grid. How do you just forget the mythology of your own show in an anniversary season that's supposed to be celebrating that mythology? This is not difficult. If you just put in the slightest amount of effort to this, you can still do it on the cheap and produce something worth everyone's time. But no, as Gosei said,
there's a simple explanation for that.
And that simple explanation is new powers. That's all we get. This once again reinforces my theory that they had no intention of adapting Gokaiger originally, or at least not adapting it for the purposes of the anniversary stuff. This season is so haphazardly put together, with nothing examined or gone in any kind of depth, that they didn't even care to take out stuff that was never involved with Power Rangers. And don't tell me it was because little kids wouldn't care about the past seasons. If that's the case, why do an anniversary at all? They did a major promotional push for the fact that this was the 20th anniversary. They gave the impression that they genuinely cared about celebrating this, advertising the return of past Rangers and doing a crap ton in the merchandising to honor it, with new toy versions of stuff like the original Morphers, Megazord, and etc. Admittedly, those were the legacy toys for the adult audience, but in the main line of toys, an entire series of Red Ranger figures from across the years, the legendary Ranger keys, including special ones only for certain events, even a Titanium Ranger key, a Power Rangers only toy. None of the Sentai teams shown in the season get Ranger keys here. Mind you, that could have just been Bandai who was pushing it more, but it's very sad when the toys you're advertising care more about the anniversary than the actual show does. Oh, I'm sorry, are you sick of my ranting about this subject and you would prefer I talk about the story? To that I say, what story? Oh, stuff happens certainly, but when it comes to consequences for their actions, forget about it. That would get in the way of the fight scenes. Speaking of, there's also the end of the episode to really give a kick in the crotch.
You've mastered your new SPD powers. That means you can now access the legendary SPD Zords.
Oh, it's not that. Forgetting for a fact that mastering apparently is just an XP bar that you fill up by being in that mode, they do some SPD homage with the Megazord, and that's neat even though it has no context for anyone who has never seen it before. No, it's what happens afterwards.
All right, you guys, now let's take the fight to them!
Yeah!
Right!
They fly the Megazord into space, and destroy the majority of the Armada fleet in less than 20 seconds. Bear in mind that this is the same fleet that last episode was causing widespread destruction and led a massive invasion force, and they just smacked them out of the sky like they were nothing. Behold the disillusion of tension. If it's that easy for the Rangers to do that, why should we be in any way scared or worried about the outcome of future engagements?
Super Mega Rangers, that's a super mega win.
That's super mega bullcrap if you ask me. Oh, and at the beginning of the next episode, it looks like the fleet is back up to full strength in the establishing shots, meaning either the Rangers are so powerful the villains are a joke, or the Rangers are morons who celebrated too soon and achieved nothing. Yet we're supposed to pretend they did. Good job! What's funny though is that they could have used that fleet destruction to explain why the Armada reverts to Monster of the Day tactics for the rest of the season, forgiving that somehow Prince Vikar's ship doesn't get destroyed too. But nope! They just do that because it's Power Rangers. Gosei's "now you've unlocked such and such" never seems to end. He pulls new powers and abilities out of his mouth, I suppose, since he doesn't have an ass, all the time this season. And like the first season, it's completely at random for any minor job they do. Sometimes it's character-driven. Most of the time, it is not. In Blue Saber Saga, where Noah gains the ability to use 5 Ranger keys at once to deal a final blow to a monster. Why these 5 keys in particular? Well, since the episode was focused on a sword duel, you could argue the 5 keys had something to do with sword or melee combat. Less so the Megaforce key, and a stretch for Mystic Force, but hey, I'll give it to them. Oh yeah, and they have a Megaforce key even though they morph from Megaforce mode. I don't really mind it that much. You could argue that it's part of the powers and they can summon it, yada yada yada. Really not that big a deal in the grand scheme of things. However, that just seems like a logical thing, but less logical is when they summon the Megazord, Gosei just says their teamwork and determination has unlocked a Mystic Force Zord. Bear in mind, this is only 1 episode after the last new Zord. And why Mystic Force? Well, clearly it's because Noah now believes in magic. Why not? Clearly this show already believes in it's magic. We don't have to explain it.